We're going to open the Littleton Finance Committee meeting of April 29th, 7 p.m. We're highlight of our agenda later on in the evening is our televised pre-town meeting presentation with slides and all that. Since most of our meetings are all televised now, it's not quite the event it once was, but in any event, we were hoping to key that at 7:30. I don't know if the cable TV folks were promoting it at that time or not, but we have some people to meet with. Prior to that, we have a few odds and ends left over through the budget and warrant article process that we are looking to get some input in before the town meeting, which is next Monday, the 5th, correct? All right, yeah. Okay. So our agenda is Finance Director's report, approval of minutes. CPC had an email from Mitt Wanzer indicating that that he actually might be in a little bit later, so if he's here early, we'll deal with any folks interested in that subject whenever he's here. Otherwise, we'll hold off on that later in the meeting. The personnel bylaw change article that we had talked about earlier, we have a memo on that. Actually, we had a memo from CPC on that as well as a letter from a citizen, which I forwarded to members of the board. Similarly to the CPC chair, the Light and Water folks, Savas and anyone else that may be joining will be in later because they too have a meeting tonight. So when they get here, we'll deal with them. Not on the agenda, but I hope the board won't mind if we have memos from the Neshoba Valley Technical High School topic we've talked about a couple of times before. Charlie Ellis is here, Littleton's rep. Oh, there's Mitt. Hello. Hello. And prior to our presentation of the slides and our pre-town meeting Finance Committee report, we still have a little more editing to do on our slides, so we'll kind of go into a work mode, I guess, before we make the presentation. So with that, and seeing that I think most everybody who wanted to be meeting with us is here already, I'll suggest we put off the first two topics on our agenda, Finance Director's report and approval of minutes, till later on in the meeting to give folks who are here just to visit us on a particular topic a chance to go first. So without objection then, Mitt, I know you said that you were going to have, is Brian Richter joining you as well? Or?
Brian Richter's here.
Oh, there he is. Hello, Brian. Weren't there a moment ago. Okay, so if you unless you folks aren't prepared, we can start with you guys, and
Sure.
All right, and you're welcome to stay where you are. You're welcome to come to the front row, whatever you're more comfortable with. But we did get your memo, and appreciate that. And board members will undoubtedly have some questions or comment on it. But just to frame the issue, we conduct, as a matter of our charge, a review of all the departments' reviews before articles before town meeting, whether it's a warrant article or part of the Article 4 budget. And we know you did present an article with, I think it was about $500,000 odd worth of spending out of your CPC funds, and we didn't have a whole lot of, didn't have any backup on that. So that was preventing us from being in a position to give a favorable recommendation, and we were under the deadline printing and mailing for this. At the time, we voted to not recommend that article, but we're glad you're here to join us tonight, and perhaps you can walk through us both the process that you go through in determining the awards that you're looking to make, as well as some of the projects that you're proposing to fund through it as well.
Sure. Maybe I can sort of do both at the same time in a way.
However you'd like.
Great. So for the record, I'm Mitt Wanzer with the Community Preservation Committee, 39 Mill Road in Littleton is my address. Well, this year, I'm not sure, I'm going to try to be comprehensive and quick. So I guess the biggest project that we had this year in terms of money was 300 King Street. And I think it's great that Brian's here with us. He's on a Parks and Recreation Community Education Committee. And the 300 King Street project is upgrading and expansion of the recreation facilities at that address, especially parking lot and basketball court. And it's in total, $432,000 of CPA money, approximately, will be spent on that, and it was in 2 different awards. Sort of in this, over the course of 2013, 2014, they brought 2 different proposals to us for $200,000 and then for $232,000. And in order to pull the project off, they were able to ask us for the money. It certainly wasn't within their budget, and it wasn't before town meeting in some other form. So with the Community Preservation Act, the recent changes in that act have allowed for recreation projects. So although you may recall we talked for many years about how to do the track project, and a solution was found, but it didn't involve community preservation money, even though they were before us a number of times to talk about it. So I think this is kind of a signature project for recreation because of its scale. It's kind of on the large-ish side, and I think it was special this year. Part of the reason our budget was tapped out. We had built up some over the years some reserves. Those reserves are gone now, and I think one of the reasons is that this project was funded 100% with community preservation dollars, which is pretty much nothing we do is precedent setting. I'd like to say, because the nature of our board is that we're able to hear the applicants and approve them for eligibility, and then if it seems right for the community, we'll approve it, and that sends it to town meeting, and we really let the town meeting determine whether it gets funded or not. Up till now, because we've had smallish projects and few of them, we've been able to support mostly what people have asked and brought to town meeting, and it didn't raise many eyebrows. There have been projects that were larger than this, and they involved borrowing, but we're able to budget that from year to year and do debt service through our fund, because we have annual revenues. But my point about 300 King Street being not precedent setting is that I look forward to a future in town, and I think the memo that I offered to the committee, which is dated April 25th, I'm trying to let you know that my stance as a committee member certainly is that it's hard for us to fund every project at 100%. So we always ask the questions, what skin in the game, do you bring any skin in the game for your project? And the Parks and Rec felt, well, this is a large project, way beyond our means, and we don't have anywhere to turn. It's just going to die dead in the water if it doesn't happen. So we were able, luckily this year, to support it fully. But as I said, referencing the memo, as we move forward, there's going to be bigger projects, and there may be more open space things happening. There's nothing pressing right now for next big projects in the coming year, but I think in the next 5 years there's going to be a handful of large projects, and we won't be able to probably afford to fund them all out of pocket like this one. And a notable one is the building of new playing fields, wherever that may occur. It's going to probably cost more than 300 King Street did. So that was the largest piece of the pie this year by far. We also had scenic farmland preservation, which is for eradication and control of non-native invasive species on Route 2A and 119. That's in support of open space. and $40,000 went toward that. That was a project we fully funded. The Morgan property, which feasibility study, which is a Parks and Recreation Community Education project, is a study for $18,255. We supported that, and that's going to sort of kickstart the whole project for the building of the next playing fields. And that also is allowable under Community Preservation Act as recreation. Let me just go down, pause if you have any questions, please.
It's just a process question. When these are, kind of interesting and significant projects, have there been any public hearings, meetings on them that people would have been noticed on, have an opportunity to come in and hear about them?
Well, as a matter of course, we, people who are petitioning with an application before us can just come to our meetings, and as an open meeting, we publicize that through our printed agenda. Periodically, we make appeals to the community, bring our projects, and up till this year, we've had a dribbling of projects, and usually there was not ever a competitive environment. I'd say it didn't feel competitive this year in terms of people coming before us, and nobody spoke negatively at any of our hearings about any of the projects. So in every case, we are able to say, sounds good, let's move forward, come to us at the next meeting with an application, we approve that you're eligible, for instance. So our process is usually a two-step process with the applicant asking, is our project allowable under CPA? And if we say, yes, you're eligible, then they usually come back within anywhere from 2 weeks or a month to 2 months with an application for funding that specifies more closely what they're looking to do and asking for a number at that point.
Well, just to follow up on your question, so, and I don't know that I actually heard an answer at a certain level. Once you had the set of items that you wanted, that you had approved, did you hold a public hearing to let people see the entire slate?
Well, I don't know what that means if not an open meeting. So we did it in the form of a public open meeting posted by CPA agenda. That's it. We didn't advertise that certain applicants were before us.
What I'm getting at is, did you had agenda items for, as they came in for each of these items, but not one, basically, so people could see the overall slate. I mean, so for example, I might not, might not ruffle my feathers.
I think I know what you mean.
15,000 here, 5,000 there. Whoa, 500,000 suddenly get my attention. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't. We as a committee are a little bit. I wouldn't say we're ever blindsided by an application coming down the road, but sometimes there are times where we're surprised, especially with the timing of it, and town meeting comes around, there's relative urgency to different people's projects. We may see a person at one point in September, and then they may come in February saying, we're ready to roll, town meeting's just around the corner, and said, well, we had you in the back of our minds. And then they might be before us in March saying, okay, well, it's really good, and sorry we weren't at the last meeting, but now we're ready to roll. Do you have any money for us? And typically at that point, we'll say, well, as it turns out, yes, we do. I mean, it was a really nice thing, lucky for all the applicants, because, again, there wasn't a competitive thing. We didn't ever have an opportunity to list all the projects at once. And in fact, maybe, Brian, you could comment in terms of 300 King Street. You were outside of the cycle yourselves a little bit at one point. You said,
yeah,
we need to return.
Yeah, as far as 300 King Street, though, as far as hearings go, we did have 2 public hearings
Okay, great.
at the beginning of that. The last one was only attended by 1 person, but we did have public hearings.
Our room is usually empty too. We get it.
Right, but I think in the case of 300 King Street, folks,
But it was-
we were well aware of that because it was at the selectmen meetings, people were
Yeah.
noticed on it and where that project was being promoted.
We had one on the Morgan property as well.
Yeah. We did have public hearings for those, but no, the CPC doesn't generally have public hearings.
But the process in the past has just been pretty much like rolling admissions as opposed to a selective process, right? So if he comes in and there's money and if they qualify, then you say, okay, until there's no money left. Now, has the amount of money that you have available this year, is it considerably more than it has been in the past?
No, it's relatively fixed.
Good, about the same. You just get more requests. I would expect that to continue. The requests are going to go up as the word gets out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it is.
And you have more money to spend it now than you had before.
Word has been out for a while, but it really is the change in recreation being admissible. And then, but we will have change now in our revenue side of things. Up till now, revenue's been relatively fixed. And we're adding some revenue through a real estate surcharge on commercial properties. And then there's also whether the matter's taken up by the Board of Selectmen or someone else in town. If we bring ideas to town meetings, somebody should try to do this to make sure that with the new CPA law, we can leverage funds from other revenue sources, and if it goes through the CP fund in town, it'll get state matching. So
Would you
that
anticipate?
means it'll
Sorry,
grow.
excuse me.
It may double in
Right.
the next 5 years.
So would you anticipate going forward that the process here is you say they're qualified and then supposedly you go to town meeting and they vote yes or no. So if you have to wait then, would you anticipate going forward that there would be more of a process to say, here's all the requests, assuming you can't fulfill them all, and what are the relative priorities, or how we're going to do that? Or how do you think this is going to play out going forward? Or you say it comes December, well, the money's gone, we're done until town meeting?
I think it's going to play out a little differently from the applicant side. I think as a committee, it might not change a whole lot because we may have to tell applicants, it's not recommended that you come back to our next meeting because you're likely not to get approved for your application because we already know a few people have made deadlines. As it is, more than half of the applicants this year came after the recommended deadlines. They're not firm deadlines, but we have we've tried to promote a cycle that's comfortable for the applicant and the committee and the professionals that work in town hall to get it ready for town meeting. If we always operate the way we do this year, and there's 10 people at our February meeting, not 5 people, then that's going to be a real problem. I think we as a committee would try to head that off. It just wouldn't be responsible. So the timeline, though, would allow people to work within a 6-month window to try to bring their project to our attention, collaborate in trying to get it roughed out. A process, for instance, that I worked with Warren, Warren Terrell with the Congregational Church, who I know is here tonight. I was happy to meet with him in advance and say, well, here's some ideas for how you could present it, both to be eligible, but also to know sort of the range of what the committee might be interested to entertain as a number. And then that project meant that he was able to bring something effectively, and it was a lot of work on his end, but for the committee it was 2 meetings with a prepared presentation and a few questions, and we had all our questions answered, and so it usually gets approved pretty smoothly at that level. And by the way, just to note, what's happened typically most years is by the time it gets to town meeting, it's pretty smooth there too. There's relatively few questions because the type of projects are desirable to the townspeople and the money's already in the budget.
Even though this has been on the books and rolled since 2009, and the concept in earlier forms was familiar to folks long before that, probably be a good idea for not just this board, but folks listening in to review a little bit of what the makeup is. I know there's 4 categories now, and there's maximums and minimums by percentage of how much can be allotted and how much has to be allotted, and then the whole concept of not, you raise the money in a given year, but you don't spend it all that year. You can accrue funds. And can you speak a little bit to that, just so people have a better idea of what works here, how it works?
Yes, we're not required to have annual meetings to assess the needs of the community. It's not defined, but it does say in the CPA that the committee have needs assessment hearing. singular, and we don't know what the time frame is for that. So we talk about it every year, is we should have a needs assessment hearing this year. Last time we did it was 2 years ago, and there was nobody in attendance. So we were like, let's move on to the next agenda item. And it would be promoted in the newspaper a little bit, saying, you know, the CPA wants to hear your ideas for, you know, how you envision our money being spent in town. If you're, and we'd list the categories, and it would sort of suggest to the person who maybe had an activist kind of bent to say, you know, I want to really show up to that meeting and plug for my pet category. But it doesn't ever play out that way, because I think people are peculiarly interested in their own pet project, not category. So if they have something that they want to promote in town as a bricks and mortar project, or something that is going to support their thing, whether it's community housing or recreation, open space, or historic, they're going to wait until they have an idea and bring it in the form of an application.
My question is more fundamental, is if there's a percentage that, was it 10 or 15% has to be spent on?
10 on recreation, 10 on housing, 10 on, no, I got that wrong. 10 on historic, 10 on housing, 10 on open space, and 70% is general allowable in any of the 4 categories, the fourth being recreation.
And the recreation doesn't have a minimal amount, that's just an open category for it now?
Right.
Okay, so there are 30 minimum categories, and then the remaining 70% could be spent on any of those 3 categories, housing and historic, or,
Plus the 4.
open space, and the fourth one, recreation.
Just talk, so again, so everybody understands the housing, what that means.
It's support for community housing. It's probably the most easy. There's very few restrictions on what support means, so long as the support is to protect the buildings. It's like historic. It's viewing community housing as a resource that we need to protect in our town. So it could be to build. You could create housing. You can repair or restore it, so long as it has to do with the integrity of the building. You can't renovate kitchens and put in cabinets, because that's seen as something that benefits the comfort of the people living rather than the integrity of the structure. But some of the projects have been to, on the administrative side, even to say that we're going to put our money towards membership and promotion of a collaborative community housing intertown project, which was one of them that we awarded recently, called the Regional Housing Services. We funded at $15,000 recently. Do you have in community housing? Just to sort of fairly treat some things, I also mentioned community housing in the memo to say that that's a possibly large ticket item. If we want to do public housing in town, we're unlikely to be able to afford it. If we're creating public housing, we're unlikely to afford it through CPA alone. We need to really think on a multi-board approach about creating this, because housing is expensive to build.
Okay. You were at some point going down the list, so I might as well let you get back to that part.
Sure. The stained glass windows restoration project was supported, or will be supported if town meeting approves it, for $45,000. This is the second project of its type that supports a historic structure in town that's privately owned. Another historic, both of them are churches, by the way. The Baptist Church had the clock tower face restoration done, and that project's complete. And the stained glass window replacement in the Congregational Church is, this is in support of their, it's specifically to restore the stained glass windows that are historically significant, and the $45,000 is pretty much half of that project. In the presentation that Warren brought to us, he also highlighted the fact that this $90,000 that they would like to spend on the stained glass windows is part of a $1 million project to redo their meeting house, which is used broadly by the community.
Before you go on, I mean, you know you're going to get questions about this on town meeting floor. I mean, I'm in the UU church, you guys want to replace our organ? It's old? I mean, I don't mean to be flippant, but I'm just
No.
trying to see where's the boundary?
You're not, it's a fair question. I-
You can apply for it. Oh.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we talked about, well, I immediately go to the details, so if you don't mind. In my opinion, the organ is interior and it doesn't serve the community as broadly as something that's an exterior something. The window is visible from the street, the clock tower has a timepiece on it that's used by the village commonly. I think it would be allowable certainly because it is a historic structure and it's listed that way in various places in town. So we'd have to debate
It
it.
is in fact the first church in town. I mean, UU Church is celebrating their 300th, right along with
Sure,
Wilton.
sure.
So, I
And,
mean, I'm just wondering, I mean, I sort of mean it as a counterexample, but in fact, if it's allowable, I'll apply for it.
Well,
But then,
right. I think, so that goes to the thing, if that goes to the question of why would we spend public tax dollars in a fund that's created by a surcharge on real estate tax? Why would we spend it on individuals' private projects around town? That's the question that I thought you were going to ask. And if a person said, well, why don't you repair my organ, then somebody else may ask this question, so I might as well put it out there and say why I support these types of projects is that the Community Preservation Act was created to try to preserve resources that are characteristic of Massachusetts towns. And those are especially historic resources and open space. So things that are threatened by change in our community can be protected through actions through this fund. So I think that if it's a historic structure, it doesn't matter necessarily that it's privately owned. If it's meaningful to the town, it could be preserved, and that's why I think it's allowable
Okay.
with our fund.
I'm sympathetic to that. I mean, I was on the Historic District Study Committee, these 15 years ago that, tried to do this argument on a larger scale. Gloriously got shut down. So, I'm just, I don't know, church and state is just interesting.
Well, it does fall into the category, so, because it is a historic value, so.
I hear you.
And I think it's also, let me put it another way, if you try to put the shoe on the other foot and try this out, is should we, as an effort, as a communal effort of all the townspeople of Littleton, should we try to put our efforts and our money into preserving only those assets that are town-owned? Or should we try to use broadly and fairly the money of the Community Preservation Fund to support things that are characteristic of our community? I think a real emblematic project that shows the spirit of this is the Hope Memorial Building, which has been a long time, has been the site for the Historical Society, which is a non-town committee group, and they rent it for next to nothing, I guess. But as the tenants of the building over the past, say, 10 years or however long it's been, 20 years now, they knew that the roof needed replacing, and so they actually put in over $50,000 toward that project of their own personal money to put a roof on a building that's a town-owned building. So I think that represents sort of the flip side of the spirit of we communally try to preserve our assets, whoever may own them, because they're irreplaceable. Historic resources are irreplaceable.
Okay. If you're close to the
bit.
answer, you might as well let you get through. There's a lot of general questions I'm
Long
having.
store.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of historic resources, the Long Store feasibility study is to hire an architect. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's it's maybe $20,000. And the building's in storage currently right now, and it has a lot of broad support around the community, people who are interested in the project and have already put a lot of sweat into it. I think they'll be have a real presence at town meeting. And that is a longer-term project that the committee is likely going to be asked to support again in the future. Because, and that's interesting because it is construction. If it got restored, it would involve permitting and site work and a lot of labor and materials to recreate the store in a historically accurate way, to rehabilitate it. So that project could be costly and may involve, I don't know, we'd have to be creative a little bit how to fund that, I think.
I just want to say I'm Linda Steinem from the Historic Commission. If anyone has questions about the Long Store project, I can help answer them.
Okay.
And then the remaining three ones on my list are about the Littleton Housing Authority. Public housing in town has a couple different sites. We may have had 4 applications, and they're listed differently in different places, but Pine Tree Park and Patriot Circle have various needs, and Community Preservation was able to support them this year. Some of those are being phased, sort of like the stained glass restoration project. If an applicant says, well, we can wait on something, this is a costly long-term project, we can do it piecemeal. That's an advantage, and it means that we don't have to borrow money. But they will have to reapply because town meeting will have to approve that every time. I think the Pine Tree Park, well, actually, the Littleton Housing Authority buildings have got a lot of attention, and like the Parks and Recreation Community Education Commission, they are frequently or repeatedly petitioned to try to fix things that are gone wrong, and largely, a lot of times people complain in a style of, this is a disgrace, I'll have to talk to my elected officials to try and figure out how we can get this place repaired, because it's just falling apart, and the Littleton Housing Authority says we're sympathetic to that, but gee, we just don't have the money in our budget. And so I think Lisa Larrabee's efforts to creatively solve some of those problems through CPA this year was a really good partnership, because she could say, this is urgent and I need a few $1,000s here, and with Bonnie's help we were able to say, okay, well, this project could do that, we can afford that, we can also afford this, and we'll replace the sinks or we'll fix the boilers this time. But that's going to keep on going. That's another sort of thing, the floodgates are open, right?
Okay. Well, thank you. I got a question since Bonnie gave us a memo as well, too, on the debt service. This memo that we have, it kind of highlights 4 transactions, but what I don't see, and maybe I'm missing it somewhere, is just the running balance of how much we take in any given year.
Sure. Basically, in CPC funds, the levy surcharge raises about $208,000 a year annually. The state will match anywhere from 25% to, it could be 45%. It varies every year. But I think the lowest it ever went was about 25% in one given year. That comes in later. That won't come in until September. But yeah, generally about $208,000 comes in from the levy.
Okay, and
that's
proposed
1%.
spending is for about $500,000 because the balance going into this year is,
The balance going into the year was $370,000. So adding the $208,000 to that gave them, a significant amount.
what's going to be the balance after?
There will be $59,442. Primarily, the community housing bucket will have $53,000 of that. So
In what percentage did the state match this past year?
I believe it.
53.
Yeah, it was high. We got that
53.
53%?
It was but it was a one-time
right.
infusion of funds, which will not become the norm. It was
Right.
just one time.
So more
From the
likely in the
state, from the
30-ish
state.
range is a
Yeah.
good safe up and down number?
I think that there may be, the unusual years will be higher than 25 and 30%. But for, long-term planning purposes, we shouldn't be counting on more than 25 to 30%, and be thankful in that one off year, once in a while, when the legislature can find its way to pump up to a higher number.
There is legislation to add $25 million from the state budget to it. That's how this one-time occurrence happened.
I want to get through the board members here and see if they have any questions.
Sure, well, it's new information, I thought.
Yep. Anything additional?
There's going to be a presentation at town meeting, though, right? Is it's going to be discussed in detail, or is
I
it
don't
just
know
going to
if
be
they're
presented? I mean, you guys,
I think our plan is, and I haven't talked to Keith or anybody about this, but I think as a committee, it would be helpful to more briefly, without interruption, to try to, for me or someone else on the committee to say, here are the 8 projects this year with a thumbnail sketch, just like one sentence each. And then here, if there's a motion to approve it. And in past years, that's just been yes, voice vote, go, the budget's done. It may be different, I don't know. And then, but if a person wants to speak directly to, say, the Long Store, they'll have ready a slideshow on a memory stick or something to say, we'll answer your questions.
So Keith had some input on
Yeah,
that.
I talked to the moderator today. We'll have our pre-town meeting briefing for the moderator this Friday, but we taped a town meeting preview earlier this afternoon. And afterwards, we discussed that this article for the community preservation, he's planning on handling, like he does, for examples, any of the longer articles, whether it's the budget or the capital improvements plan, and that is call by name each line, each item in the article. If anyone wants to discuss it and have a separate vote on it, he'll pull that out for discussion. If there are no questions on it, he'll have a motion to approve the unchallenged portion. So let's say, what if there are 12 items that have dollar amounts in them in Article 8. So may or may not get questions about some individual items. People may not have anything to ask about the $5,000 for administration or the various debt service amounts. But if they want to discuss a particular project, or if a proponent wants to have a vote on a particular project, call it out, and then let's say if 4 of the 12 items get called, then there will be a vote on 8 items, get that done, and then there will be 4 separate votes, say, on the individual ones. That's how we do the operating budget, of course, and it's how we do the capital plan. We don't present, we don't make longer presentations to the people in the room than they are willing to hear from us. But we will be prepared if there's
Questions come up.
information on it to have a presentation and discussion.
Okay. Any other board members on the presentation?
Do you ever do fall town meeting, or is it just you just do it for the main town meeting and that's it?
We could follow town meeting too, if it,
So
if there's
if
even.
somebody wants your,
if
some,
there's
yeah,
even just
59,000
one
that you
thing.
got left over, then.
Yeah. Yeah, it could.
Okay.
I just want to, we did get a letter, and I just want to, we got a letter from a citizen asking us to stay with our no vote, and I just I wanted to take one of their questions, because it sort of dovetailed with one I had, which was, the one thing that just puzzles me a bit is, on the first page, remember, you talk about, we've never gotten to the point of not having reserves before, but then you also say it's been such a luxury to be able to fund everything. And the citizen letter said, that they thought it wasn't a good idea to get to, zero reserve, even though just heard it was 59,000, not zero. So I'm just wondering what your thinking was about, is it really a luxury? Is it the right thing to go all the way down, or not? And I don't know that I have an opinion. I just want to hear what you say, because at least the citizen, and who I don't think is here, asked the question. So,
Okay, and thank you for reminding me, Brian, we did receive a letter by email from a woman who was not able to attend, Maureen Edema, and I just wanted to make sure all the members got that, and that, as Brian accurately said, it was supporting the earlier no vote that this committee had made. I've got a few points to make, but I know, Dawn, you wanted to get a point in, and if there are audience members, board members, or otherwise that have questions or comments, we can go with it, but Dawn, did...
Could I get an answer?
Huh? Oh, that was a question.
There actually was a
Okay.
question in there, I think.
So you referenced the memo. Could you point out the place?
Oh,
please?
it's just the,
Drive in quality. Page 1, you said?
yeah, page 1, last sentence, second paragraph, said, of course, more revenues are on the way, but we never had no reserves before this round. And then, somewhere you said, having the luxury of funding everything. And I sort of, I'm just wondering what your thinking is about, how much reserves you want to carry. Just your thinking.
It's a matter of opinion, so you're asking me, and I felt like it to be deliberate, to represent our committee. I said I would report to you that we went to zero, so to speak, and zero is a relative term.
Yes, it always is, but very well.
Especially because we have categories that demand we pay in certain places. But I think we're not a board that creates projects or executes them. We're just an approving board. So I think, in my opinion, it's okay to be in different places in terms of our reserve. It's been high for a while, and we've often sort of shook our heads and say, how can we get more people to knock on our door?
I think that problem's gone.
Yeah, and it's going to be more challenging, but, and also, so as our revenues increase, which I hope they will robustly, some of the committee members feel like we need to have a real firm grasp on this. We need to define better, some of our rules for approving the levels that we do for each project. I'm more of the opinion of if you're before us and you have a reasonable presentation, or your application is meritorious, we're going to say yes, or I will. And it could create a problem on the town meeting end, I don't know, but we may have to cross that bridge. So in my opinion, it's okay that it's at zero.
Okay, I'm just curious, because the thing is, every proposal we hear has merit, and we sort of have gotten used to saying no, just because we can't.
Is there a thought or a policy, though, regarding the level of debt and what that constitutes as a percentage of your debt payments, as a percentage of how much you need every year, or things like that?
No, but I think that's a near-term goal for our committee, is to work with Town Hall to say, how many more projects like this can we afford to do debt service on? We're locked in for 20 years for somebody. Do we have to wait 20 years before we say yes to the next person?
All the other capital projects the town's involved in, buildings, equipment, the rest of it is part of that very kind of, long-term constructive planning, and I think it only makes sense to integrate CPC into the same kind of regimen. Bonnie?
I actually did look at the debt service commitments this year because of the Church Meadow project. And up on the screen there, you can see the revenue component is $208,000 a year. The debt service is $127,338 at the bottom. We cannot authorize debt service that would exceed that $208,000 per year. Otherwise, I'm committing money that I don't have.
Right.
So that's the magic number.
That's the extreme, that's 100%, so there's no money for anything else.
Exactly.
So that's not the right answer either,
The
obviously.
right answer is the debt service should be about half of what it is.
Right. But you have to monitor that annually. We review at each project and make sure that we're within our limits.
And so what is the process for that? If you, and I guess I should have known, because I know we've done this before, I wasn't on the board, though. So if you actually go into, does that go into the whole town meeting debt servicing, or is it different because it's under CPC?
It goes into the whole town debt service, but it's that revenue dedicated debt service component. So it's supported exclusively by CPC funds.
And not presently subject to the same policy rules that we impose on ourselves on the other items, correct? Not your fault, it's just the reality of what we're dealing with.
Different review
here.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if they don't meet that debt service, then it falls back
On the town.
To the
to
town.
town to meet the debt service, so.
All right. Dawn, you've been remarkably patient. Yes.
Okay, and I don't know how you want to go about this, but I'm also a Community Preservation Committee member and did a lot to bring this about. And there's several issues. I've looked at things carefully, and some things I would remove my recommendation to the amount that's listed there for valid reasons. And as you know, we have, 12 items, or roughly, so I don't know how you want to go about this. But certainly, one of my feelings is that we need to change the way we go about looking at applications before us. You know, they may have merit, but they may not warrant full funding as to what's requested, like a granting agency. We need to look at everything at the same time for allocating our recommendation. We haven't done that. This is the first year this has occurred, and we've had the luxury of having plenty of money there, but there's a problem with that. So that's one thing. Secondly, I believe we need to keep a reserve because some projects may come up quickly. Spending it down to zero, I think, is unwise for any situation. And we can go in more detail if you want to, but hopefully your committee will add some expertise to how we think about how we go about it for next year. There's one item in the Housing Authority listing that I think we already voted on a previous year. So that should be discussed. Why are we putting on the warrant if we've already done this previously? And I believe people are supposed to check into that as homework, so you may want to ask where that is.
You want to give us a clue which one it is?
You're going to look into one of the Housing Authority people is for paying for cutting down trees and items of trees and siding, but there's one particular item that has been spent because it was authorized previously and somehow it got on the warrant again. So I think that's something we should resolve before we go to town meeting. So do you know which one it is? Right offhand off the top of your head? Or I know Housing Authority is going to look at that.
Right. I think it was the trees, and I think it's an invoice that can be paid out of money that's already been approved by town meeting.
Right, so it shouldn't be on the warrant article again, right? Because that'd be a duplicate approval.
Well, I don't know. I'll look into that.
Okay, it's one of the things we need to
All
resolve.
right, yeah. That's,
Okay, that's side there. Other things that I would suggest reducing the amount on. And once again, I don't know how you want to go about this. This is your meeting, your structure, so suggest.
Hit the high points.
Okay, I'll make it quick. On the Morgan property, I know there are various issues there. It's in 3 phases. There's still discussion or unresolved issues between Concom and Park and Rec. But in those 3 phases, the first phase is for $3,700 something for determining wetlands. And that's broken down into 2 steps. And it says by step 1, when they check the soils of the open field area, it may determine it's unnecessary or it's not possible to do it. So my suggestion is allocate that lower amount. They can always come back again in the fall time. Sometimes it takes a long time to determine whether something's a wetland. Once in Carca Charge of Natural Resources, it took us 1 year to determine one field. So I would suggest that be no more than that stage 1 cost, which is $3,712.
Dawn, if I can interrupt at just one point. You are on the CPC committee, correct?
Yes.
All right, so have you given this input in your own internal process?
A lot of these things are presented as a document while you're there, and it isn't carefully examined. I have looked at wetland maps there. I know it's very wet. I think that might resolve the issue.
Okay.
So that's one issue, and there may be a discussion for that. Another issue I have is what there's been a lot of complaints about is the very large amount, $232,000 for 300 King Street. Isn't that I'm against 300 King Street, but $200,000 has already been spent for that. And I know the application's very confusing. I don't see any going out for grants to supplement this. You know, when we acquire land, this is even acquiring land, we own the land. we acquire land, we usually apply for state grants and other grants. I don't see any of that, and yeah, here we are, I have 3 basketball courts at $500,000 by the time we finish. I think maybe that should be pulled and be examined in detail and maybe come up in the fall meeting. There's no urgency, there's no window of opportunity, we're not gonna lose anything, but the cost of the project has expanded, and this is a huge chunk of money. There's been a lot of public opposition or concerns about that, I've heard from folks.
Okay, thank you. And I'll get to you next. I just want to make a general statement that I'll entertain at this point questions about the overall process, the article as a whole, or individual projects that you might have a question or advocacy for. So, to that end. Kate.
We had several meetings. I'm sorry, I'm Kate Hodges from the Parks and Recreation Department. I'm the director. We had several meetings with the Conservation Commission, working with them on the Morgan property. The reason that it's phased for 3 and why we asked for the entire thing, which was outlined in our proposal to the CPC, of which was a yes vote unanimous at the time, was because it is less expensive while they're all out there if they do the project all at once. So they do phase 1 and find out that the ground is wet or there's too much wetlands and it wouldn't be able to be conducive to playing fields, the project is done. However, if they find that it would be conducive to playing fields, it is less expensive for them to then mobilize and go on to phase 2, which is why we asked for the complete study and evaluation so that it could go from 1 to 2 to 3 and not have several years in between. I was also told that depending on funding, if we got funding to do phase 1 and found out that the ground was or was not wet, that data is only good for a certain amount of time. So waiting indefinitely to get X amount of dollars to go on to another phase may, by the time we get that money, have phase 1 be expired. As far as 300 King Street, also unanimous yes vote. We went back because we had no idea that there was not conducive conditions to be able to go over and make the courts adequate and what we need to do. In addition to that, there was no stormwater runoff. There was no drainage there. There was nothing to be done about the wetlands delineation. And so the initial, I guess, permitting and flagging and surveys that we thought were going to be less expensive ended up being a great deal more expensive. As far as people having opposition to it, I'm unfortunately, or fortunately for us, have not heard anything. We had 3 public hearings. We did a mass mailing. We did apply for several grants, 7 of which I applied for myself. We didn't receive them. We've tried. You know better than anybody what our budget is, and we don't have that kind of money. To scale down the process, $235 is what it takes to get the project only 3/4 of the way completed. It is not just 3 basketball courts. It is a walking track. It is a handicapped accessible parking lot, which is a requirement. It is getting all of the site amenities. It's getting all of the drainage. It's filing all the proper paperwork. It's a lot more than just 3 basketball courts. We had, like I said, 3 public hearings on it, 2 of which were very well attended, 1 was not. Nobody once spoke up to any opposition. I think we have a lot of support for that, and we are prepared to answer any questions and make a presentation.
And once again, I'll say I'm not against 300 King Street
It was a
being
yes.
developed, it's the costing and
Gotcha. Yeah, that's your point. All right. Any other individual items or general comments? I've got a few, but Keith?
I'd just like to be an advocate for the debt service. And in accordance with the town's policies, we only undertook that debt on CPA-funded projects because it fell into that category of debt for which there were dedicated revenue sources. So please recommend that we use the dedicated revenue source so that, because we are forced to pay the bill, we're forced to pay the debt service under law, whether we fund it or
What they
not.
do down in Washington, that's not so sure.
Well, but we pledge the full faith and credit of the town to pay the bills, and so I would urge you, no matter how you feel about particular projects, and on the particular projects, I would urge you to let, you know, we will have, the voters will tell us how they feel about each and every one of them, not, you know, even with your negative recommendation, or if it doesn't change, but I do think it's important for the Finance Committee to recommend that we pay for our finance bills from the dedicated source.
Okay, that's a point we can definitely get into. Michael?
I'm speaking as the president of Littleton Youth Basketball. We have a very vested interest in the 300 King Street project as a program. I'm just hoping that, I'm very glad that the CPC is here, because I saw the tape of the previous meeting of the FinCom where you took the no vote, and as I saw it, it was mostly along the lines of because of lack of information. And I'm hoping that now that you do have information and you get your questions answered, that you're going to, be willing to reconsider, if not the whole article, at least pieces of the article, and either make a different recommendation, hopefully positive in some regard, or minimally neutral, just because now you have seen the CPC and had the questions answered. Just because I don't want people at town meeting to think you're voting no because you're actually against particular aspects or the whole slate of the project.
Both of those inputs, I think, is probably going to lead us to a place where we can get out tonight. But I have some more points myself, and I don't know if other board members do. I don't want to belabor too many points, but then again, this is the first time we've had a meaty discussion on the whole topic. And and I do applaud all the work you put in, all of you folks, in entertaining, soliciting input, all the rest of that. All this stuff is, great stuff, the projects that all of us like to be involved in, whether it's recreational opportunities for the town, whether it's open space, I don't know, former housing commissioner, housing authority, all the above. So it's not the, either your own individual work or the projects you're working on that is at issue here. But a few points that come to mind for me. First of all, the whole, the fact that when we are asked to take a vote, it's a yes or no on the entire article, and there's a lot of pieces to it. That's difficult when individual members might say, I support funding A, B, and F, but I don't support D, E, C, D, and E. So I'm not sure where we can come out on that. Our standing vote right now is a not recommend on the overall article, but we could revisit that before the evening's over. And I don't know. Obviously, we can't change anything for this year, but maybe going forward, we might want to have a conversation about how to go about that, Keith.
I would agree with that completely, and especially because literally the stakes are going to be higher, and I hope they are, because we have part of one of the financial strategies we're pursuing. Town meeting voted last November to accept the amended Community Preservation Act that would allow us to use other local funds to increase the capacity for state matching funds.
Right.
With the notion that we will have more CPA funds available for expenditure, because we know in our hearts that there are plenty of unmet needs for which CPA funds could be used. To the extent that we're therefore dealing with more money, it really is that much more important that we have a solid financial plan. And I think we've got, some great examples of other things we do. We have a multi-year capital improvements plan. It would certainly make sense to at least impose upon the town departments that any project that they think they might want to have funded through CPA funds must go through the same capital improvements plan process as anything else, and that would call out those numbers.
Right.
We can make that formally if we want to go through a process. I recall a few years ago, back when the committee, the CPC first began, we did have the annual process of the public hearing it would be advertised. There would be a specific deadline. You had to have your application in by December 1st in order to get to hope for a town meeting. For your eligibility funding application had to be in by some date. The actual grant application would come in at a later date. And I think it may be well to, even though it may mean that for the applicants there's less flexibility, I think there needs to be more structure imposed on it by the town entities that are reviewing it. And
So I think
going forward, I think is very important.
in a triage system. I think what we could do immediately is revisit our own vote. whether or not that ends up in being a favorable vote or just a neutral vote with an explanation at town meeting on the, specific pieces of it. We have that mechanism that you discussed, that you had discussed with town moderator about individually voting the pieces, and we could, I suppose, specifically advocate on behalf of the debt piece, if nothing else. And then thirdly, going forward, maybe this is getting too big to be handled in an omnibus article, and, might want to be going back to.
Yeah, our practice has been, if there has been a major expense like, the major expenses that we've had have been debt, land purchases, debt, things like that, and those are separate articles.
Right.
I think we've sort of, maybe there was some mission creep here where there are enough small articles that when you add them up, it's a big number.
Right.
And we can come up with a better system by which all the numbers are plugged into our financial planning. Because we certainly want to, if we have unmet recreation needs, we certainly want to identify that. Our housing needs, anything that the town is responsible for doing, and we have a revenue source, we want to encourage that use, but we want to make sure that it's plugged into our overall financial plan.
I'll finish up if I can. Two other points I want to make, and I know other folks have probably been spurred to come up with other thoughts. I was particularly concerned personally about the small balance that we're being left with after having been in this, process for a number of years, $50,000. Because I know, just in conversations, especially since this has arisen in recent weeks, but even before that, when people were pitched on this years ago to vote it through, and a lot of people walking around town thought, okay, that's the surtax override that we have to spend, 10% on housing and 10% on historic, and, the park and rec piece is newer. But the rest of it is a savings account to buy open space, and it's not, putting aside the merits of these individual items, that's not, how it's being used. And, that's an evolution that I think is significant from what the original sales pitch was on use of the CPC. So if nothing else, I think there ought to be a much more public dialogue on that. What's the mission of this? What's the expectation? Otherwise, it's just an override surtax to fund more capital projects, as long as we can make them fit one of these definitions. My bigger concerns, and I think this meeting tonight is a great step in the right direction. There's all sorts of topics, whether it's the overlap between some of these projects and the other items that are considered in the capital review process, which was just referenced a moment ago by Keith and other folks. Those projects go through a specific kind of scrutiny, and then it seems like certain projects that we've even heard about in that process, boom, end up here. Well, how did that happen? And has that been weighed appropriately with other worthy projects? Maybe these are all just the right smart decisions, but I'd feel a lot more comfortable if I knew that it was being considered in the bigger context of the overall capital planning process. And just the different touch points in the budget process, and I hope from tonight you guys will participate, as other folks do. In the fall, individual FinCom members go out and meet with all the different spending units in the town departments and whatever, and kind of figure out and find in advance what your plans are, what might be coming up. Folks like Kate, Park and Rec, you guys already know that. Schools certainly know that. We go around and meet to try to identify before the process. And then we have an all-day, budget session. This year it was in November, the year before in December, where everybody has their little 15 minutes of fame to talk about what they're up to, and everyone else gets to hear you. So, it's kind of part of the big picture. And then more, so that when the warrant articles are drafted, and we're reviewing the actual spending proposals, it's not the first time we're hearing about them or seeing the numbers. It's usually the third time around, and it's something that's kind of understood in context of everything else. So, and all of that just kind of goes back to just the general notion of communications. If you wouldn't mind just going forward when you're communicating on things that are potential expenditures, other than your own little internal deliberations, CC, Bonnie or us. It won't be me necessarily. It won't be me as chair next year. It'll be Chris. So somebody, so that we're in the loop on that. And I think those are my biggest points I wanted to make. Yep.
Well, thank you for that invitation, and we hear it loud and clear. I'm sorry we weren't here at most recent meetings, but it's clear that we're sort of moving on from that. So again, thanks for that. I took some notes that we should meet in the fall, do some things like that, so that's ahead. And if I may just make one further comment, is really a request that your board tonight vote in favor of article for the CP fund in town. Not just to be neutral, but I'd say really to reverse it and vote in favor of it, because what we've heard, and I think we as a committee share some of the blame for something that's happening community-wide, and this is referenced a little bit in my memo, so if you're interested in my thoughts further, you can read that. I think we as a community should work to outline capital expenditures, things that are big-ticket items that we know are out there, but nobody's willing to actually point to and say, we own that. And the track project is emblematic of that, and we weathered that just fine.
We call them
But there's
budget
been
reference, things that don't have a big department advocating for them.
And I think in this, yes, and right at our turning point right now, the town would benefit from your board saying, okay, we can weather this little storm. If we do an omnibus and it passes town meeting floor like a breeze, and everybody breathes a sigh of relief, we know that our work then begins to do the next phase, which is we can't go through this year after year because CP is running out of money and there's plenty of town, projects on the horizon. But there's things that wouldn't have happened this year through any other means than this. So the fact that we went to zero, I'm okay with, but I think the writing's on the wall. Just to weather this, I really urge your board to vote yes.
That's a great segue back to the board. What's the flavor of the board?
Three things that the CPC needs to do. Everybody on this board has heard me complain vociferously for the last 2 or 3 years that we don't have a representative on the CPC from FinCom, which when CPC was put together, we did have. Had we had this, problems of debt service being 50% of expected revenues would have been raised to a level with the committee that says, you can't do that, guys. The issue of drawing all funds down with no reserves. You can't do that. A fine FinCom member would have said, hey, wait a minute, we got to do something about that. The other thing is, you need to have written financial guidelines reviewed by FinCom and approved by the Board of Selectmen, so that these kinds of things don't get rolling and everybody forgets that there's years further ahead and more projects to come. Right now, if something came up that everybody just loved to do, you can't do it. There's no reserve. There's nothing there. You may find that one of the projects that you're giving them money for really turns out to need another $20,000 to be completed. We got to go someplace else for it because there's no reserve. So those are three things you have to look at and take care of now. And thanks for coming before the board, because we really did need to hear what you're doing and what your thought process was.
Thank you.
All right, well, the suggestion, I know, Alan, Warren, you were here a few weeks ago, but did you want to make a particular pitch on the windows?
Yes, and I'd be very brief.
Okay.
The stained glass window project, we recognize, is a arrow to the heart of how you fund projects. It's different. It's not a public project perceived by some. It's a private project. But we would hasten to point out that the stained glass window project very closely does meet the requirements for the historical and cultural preservation aspects of the CPA grant. The CPC grant proposed in this case is about $45,000 for a phase one part of the project, which is around $64,000. And we've raised all the funds towards that. In fact, I'm very happy to report that we have raised for our total project of the renovation of the Meeting House, $1.05 million, which is just slightly more than our project cost, including the windows. So we've come a long way over the last year in doing that. The windows themselves are culturally and historically very valuable in the town because they list the founding members of the church, the early ministers of the church, and there's a long history there. And recently, CPA projects in other towns, Acton, Westford, and Littleton, have funded churches in several churches of various faiths, including stained glass windows at the Methodist Church in Westford. But in the bigger picture, when we think about Littleton and our 300-year history, the churches of Littleton are a moral compass of this town, and they help and are part and parcel of our history, of our makeup, of our depth of what it means to be a resident and citizen in Littleton. So I would offer thanks to St. Anne's, to the Unitarian Church, to the Baptist Church, the Mormon Church, and more recently, the Chinese Church, and of course our church, for being that base, that moral compass in our town. This project for the stained glass windows will go forward. And with your help, it'll take out some of the bumps along the way and continue the church's role in this town, all the church's role in this town, as a moral compass. Thank you.
Well, we've had advocacy on the specific, some of the specific items, and we have a request from CPC to reconsider our vote of a couple weeks ago. So what's the thinking of the board?
Well, I mean, to be quite honest, I mean, the no vote was in large measure to try to get your attention, because we couldn't figure out how to do that. And I think we accomplished that goal, so we get it. So I think, I think it's legitimate for us to reconsider. I mean, I think that the question before us is, do we say yes or are we neutral? I mean, Alan raised some great points. I mean, I think we can change our vote. It's not clear to me.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on the points there. Either do we stand with the vote, do we vote to rescind that vote and be neutral, or do we vote in support? Those are our options. So what's the pleasure of the board? I go around. Fred, did you have any initial thoughts? Are you waiting to hear us hash it out further?
No, I think that this year obviously is an anomaly for what the CPA or what I call it is CPC is bringing forward. And I think that, the town has this board. They are charged with the authority to recommend to the town what they think are worthwhile projects. And the town meeting has the right to vote individually on each and every line item. So either we have to vote on each and every line item, which I don't think is our purview, or we should accept their recommendation with the caveat that they need to put in writing their processes and procedures and make sure that they dovetail with the town's financial processes and procedures going forward. I think with that, I would be okay supporting it at this point. And if one or more of the projects get blown up on the town meeting floor, then the will of town meeting will prevail, one way or the other.
Okay. Working around the corner, Alan?
I think certainly whatever recommendation we have, if it's recommend totally, then that covers everything. If we don't recommend totally, certainly we'll want to recommend the debt service portion. And then perhaps neutrality in deference to town meeting with all the others. And my reservation there has nothing to do with any individual particular one, but I'm still very concerned about drawing down to absolutely no reserve. So my recommendation is neutrality other than debt service.
Betsy?
My feelings are more along with Fred. I think that you followed the guidelines or the process that you've had in place in the past. And so I would be okay with approving this with the caveat or the understanding that we get into a more structured process going forward. And I think we have to anyway. But I think we'd all be more comfortable with that because it seems like it's a lot of money right now that feels a bit like a slush fund. And I know that's not true because I know you have quite a process that people have to go through, but
You call it that, there's just no other place to go.
I know.
So we can be that.
That wasn't one of our recommendations to call it.
no.
But then it'll run out.
But
so
you know, one
I
thing,
don't want
but
that
you know,
either.
just one other point, as you were talking, and when we talked about more about the capitalization process, or the capital process, like, even when we go through the capital process, like, there's always more or enough good recommendations of things we should buy with the amount of money that we have. And like, I know last year we looked at it and we said, these are all legitimate, but we need to say, we have to prioritize and still, even though they're legitimate, we're gonna stop the limit here, because we gotta put some of this away, because we know we're gonna need it for something else. And I think that's kind of the feeling here, is like, is it just because there's enough money you spend it, or do we make sure that these are the things we really want to spend it on? And I think that's
And some topics
right.
are a good idea 4 or 5 years running
Right.
before they get funded
Right.
too.
Right, sometimes you put things off and see if they come back again or whatever, so yeah.
Okay. Chris?
I agree. I think we should just either just vote to recommend the whole article as written, rather than getting into breaking it down. I do believe we need to kind of work closer with them on the financial part of the whole process going forward. But I agree with Fred and Betsy, and I think we should move forward with recommending it, the full article.
Okay. You spoke early, but Brian, any additional thoughts?
God, I'm torn. If I have to agree with one of the two of you, man, I don't, You want to go first?
Oh, no, I'm using every chance prerogative to go last here.
Wow.
He doesn't count.
Doesn't happen very often, does it?
I feel strongly both ways, I see.
Well, the thing is, okay, I take exceptionally seriously the caveat that Moody's gave us when they increased our bond rating to AAA, that basically was, don't screw it up. Okay, that's our most important thing, is to preserve the bond rating, because that money will dwarf anything here. And they said basically they gave us the rating because of adherence to policy. And so we haven't really followed our policy, but we've agreed that we will in the future. Right?
Well, the only caveat that is somewhat comforting here, none of this is being bonded. This does
Fair
not
enough. Fair enough.
increase the indebtedness
Fair
to
enough.
the town or to CPC.
Okay, that's
Okay.
where I'm coming from.
All right. My feelings are not unlike the rest of the committee. I think the most important consideration for me is where we go from here. I don't think any of these decisions here that I may not, on the list, that I may not personally find to be the biggest priority is more important than the fact that I think we need to show support for the process. I also think it's important we explain at town meeting that we're kind of evolving our, handling of this whole fund, and we've had a good first meeting towards setting up a more structured way of dealing with that, and we want to make the CPC financial review process something that we can be as proud of as we are of all our other financial policies. So, I accept that there's good faith on following through on that part of it. Well, I think we have the right to get as confusing and as we want in terms of making, we recommend this part, not that part. I think we probably have it within our power to do that, but who the heck would understand what we even meant by it? With that in mind, I'm inclined to go with the notion of a rescinding of our earlier vote and a support for the article in its entirety. And, you know, can defend it on those points on town meeting floor, and I think it's fair to, you know, let you know that I think we probably ought to, when the article comes up, get up and make some sort of little statement that qualifies, you know, why we're backing it and what that entails, so. I didn't hear unanimity around the table, but we're close to it, so I'd like to hear a motion.
Make a motion to approve Article 8.
Recommend?
Recommend.
And in doing that, rescinding our earlier vote?
Rescinding our earlier, decision to not vote, not
recommend.
Not recommend.
Okay. So that's a motion?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded then that the Finance Committee rescind its earlier vote to not recommend Article, what is it, 8? Article 8, the CPC funding, and to vote to recommend the article. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Good. Good meeting.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The one-page handout that people get at town meeting, supplemental motions will indicate the Finance Committee voted on April 29, 2014 to support Article 8.
You already have it printed out?
One copy.
Just a question, do you have?
The meeting's not over yet. We may yet recommend. You're challenging us to surprise you somewhere, Keith.
Oh, he's probably got 2 other memos in there, too.
Right.
Other action items.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, good time.
All right.
Makes me nervous. I want him to-
Charlie, I told you we were going to be on at 7, didn't I? Yeah, and there's a TV audience that thought we were going to be giving our presentation at 7:30, so.
I'll make it brief, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Sure, we've met, what, twice with you already? I think you've been in during the cycle? Or am I just imagining it? On the tech, and we did get some data in, right, Bonnie? You got something from?
I printed what came over
From
by
Dr.
email.
Klimkowitz and
Yeah.
Charlie.
Yep.
All right. I'm not sure if you're aware what Bonnie got. I hope you are.
Just the project budget and the
Okay.
letter from MSBA.
You have the letter from Mass School Building Authority to Dr. Klimkowitz, speaking of the project that Charlie's already given us a couple of updates on, and we have the chart that my eyes
Yeah, it was.
no longer can read,
was
but I'm
rough.
hoping you can walk us through it again. Do you want to take us wherever you think we need to go?
For the record, I'm Charlie Ellison, the appointed representative to Neshoba Valley Technical High School. We applied for and received a rather quick, fast approval from MSBA to repair our roof at the Neshoba Valley Technical High School. We had to go back to them because we found some more damage, so we have an updated number that MSBA has approved us for, which is $2,803,362. And MSBA has changed some of the way they do business. They appoint the architect now, they appoint the project manager, and they appoint the general contractor. So we're out of the mix on that. They've already accepted those bids from those people, so that's how all these numbers get built. MSBA will reimburse the school 52%. I know it's a couple of penny decimal points in there, but 52 is a working number. The amount that the member towns are responsible for is 48%. There are now eight towns in the school district. The roof project is approximately 82,000 square feet that's going to be repaired. At this time, because of the bonding attorneys, which you're all aware of, and some of the language they use and write, and that was printed in the Littleton Independent as well as all the other member towns' papers. You know, I've gotten a few phone calls that you guys must be crazy. You know, it's going to cost the town of Littleton $2.8 million. Well, that's not what it's going to be.
We are attempting to bond this for 10 years, and we're hoping that we're going to be at 4.25%, which I think is pretty accurate. You feel okay with that, Bonnie? We have a pretty good bond rating, actually, at the tech school. The percentage that Littleton is responsible for is based on student enrollment as of September 1st. Currently, we have 715 students. Littleton's percentage is 5.7%. It's about 37 students. Now, and I want to reiterate that September 1st, that if we go up with 5 or 10 eighth graders, our percentage goes up, so the payment goes up, as well as if Chelmsford's came down 10, obviously, there's a little bit of a sliding scale there. We've never seen a huge decrease or increase, so I think we're pretty safe. At this time, Littleton is about 5.7%, and at the bonding rate over 10 years, our best guess without a student enrollment deluge is going to be $7,965 a year for the next 10 years. And that just about covers everything. The only thing that we can't guarantee is an increase or decrease in student population.
So that changes on the bond of the roof changes based on the student population over the 10 years?
To the member towns. The number is fixed, but what the member towns would pay could fluctuate.
So what's roughly the total we pay right now? Of the whole project, how much would be Littleton be paying for as it?
Over 10 years?
Yeah.
$80,000.
Roughly, as long as enrollment.
I mean, at $7,965 over 10 years, it's about $80,000.
Yeah, okay, all right, so, yeah.
So it's not a huge amount of money, but we are bonding it. And that's why we've come before the towns. And I know that Chelmsford is dealing with this, as well as Westford has already dealt with it. And this takes a 2/3 majority vote from all of our member towns to carry forward, so. I'm hoping.
It's 2/3 of the towns have to agree.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that Littleton will, Finance Board and the Selectmen will go forward and support this.
So is this has it been a while since they've had a capital project? I mean.
We're finishing up a capital project now, which is our track and field, which,
Okay.
but that was not bonded, that was paid out of AIR's payment to come
Right, to
into
get
the
in?
district.
Yep, okay.
Did we already vote our recommendation on this?
I think we were just waiting for the.
You're just waiting.
Yeah, we didn't vote.
I think you were waiting for
Yeah.
the final
Yeah, we-
number because of the increase in the area that we had to repair for.
That wouldn't be separate, right?
But I thought we had already covered all our articles, no?
No, we waited for this one, because you're waiting for the money. We're waiting for the
water,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
All right, did somebody know what article it is yet?
No, I was just thinking the same thing.
12.
12?
Well,
Make a motion
Oh, yeah.
that we approve Article 12. As written.
Do we recommend? Approve.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Recommend.
that's straight.
Yes.
All right.
second.
Motion's been made then and seconded that the Finance Committee recommend Article 12, which is the Neshoba Valley Technical High School Accelerated Roof Repair Project. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
In closing, when I was a member of the Littleton School Committee, I know that we worked very closely at that time with FinCom. And I think in the ensuing years that I've been with Neshoba Valley Technical High School, I'm requesting that the Littleton Finance Committee appoint a member of your board to work with me in conjunction so that we have a conduit, a direct conduit to the Finance Board.
As some background, there's been some dialogue in other towns about doing just that, is that right, or?
Chelmsford has just done that. Stratococcus has been appointed. And in the papers, I think everyone read the papers, Chelmsford this year has actually pulled the Neshoba Valley Technical's annual budget out of what it was put into. It was lumped into the educational segment of Chelmsford as a separate line item on the warrant.
Do you have any indication that down the road, the individual FinCom reps are going to be meeting jointly? Is that the intent?
I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but I feel that oversight is always a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think that it's always good to have a sounding board, as far as I'm concerned, as representing the town. And I believe Townsend is now moving this way also. I'm not sure about Groton. Groton has their own hands full this year with their school budget.
Is
So,
is this something that, can we just approve this, or do we need selectmen approval?
I don't know, I mean, it's worth looking into. Is there any,
Any reason why we couldn't just agree to have somebody do that with Charlie, or do we have to go through the selectmen?
Right now, it's the appointment of Charlie's position is dictated by, either by statute or by the agreement between the town and,
what we're talking about doesn't really have any official status.
no, I mean, if you're talking about a liaison, I would.
I'm looking for a liaison.
Non-voting, I think you can do that.
A non-voting
You
liaison.
can do that on your own
Just
authority.
add it to the list we usually come up with.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Appoint somebody to the CPC too.
And I just think that this is a good move for us going forward.
Yeah.
And I can see that there will probably be some dialogue started in the future as Townsend goes this way also. So hopefully we'll be able to get some membership participation. For a long time, I think the tech has worked in a zone.
Yeah.
And, people get upset when the numbers go up or go down, or somebody gets upset on town meeting floor when they don't understand why it costs so much to educate a child at the vocational school. And so I think having another conduit to be able to answer some of that, and a lot of it comes down to, we pay our own health insurance. We pay our own retirement insurance. We don't have the town of Littleton to do that. We have to do our own snow removal. We have to do all of our own maintenance. We don't have the highway department to come out and line the fields for us. So there's a bunch of outside things that regular towns don't see in their school budget that we have to contend with. So it's a little different.
Yeah.
As well as the equipment that we purchase is a little different because of, $40,000 for a new milling machine.
We are, if we, I'll defer to the pleasure of the board, if we wait until we do our annual appointments.
I'd be pleased with that. I just want to make sure that we can go forward with that structure.
All right.
Do we want to just to immortalize that, we want a motion?
That we, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so let's make a motion that we, as a matter of practice, appoint a liaison to Charlie.
As well as, I know Bonnie and Keith come to our breakfast as well as Paul has.
I missed it this year, I don't know how I missed that.
So, but I think it's important that we have a direct conduit.
Okay, good. Well, that's been motioned and seconded. Motion's been made and seconded that the Finance Committee appoint a liaison to the Neshoba Valley Technical High School School Committee representative. Yeah. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, sorry to keep you
Thanks for
waiting.
staying so long, Charlie.
Thank you. All right. Well, we still don't have anyone from LELWD, but we do have the memo on the personnel bylaw changes, and thank you. I guess it was Steve and Bonnie who
Steve did
created
this.
it. And there are,
What are we on now?
this memo on there's a bylaw.
Oh, jeez.
All right.
All right.
And I imagine, Keith, you're here with interest in this as well?
Well, I was actually coming to see what the water department.
Oh, well,
was.
they've got their own meeting, they're supposed to be coming
Yeah.
here after, but...
Because that's the last, because we're inviting, I need to have Charlie and Savas at the selectmen's meeting at 6:30 on Monday night, because those are the two articles that we've not
Right.
adopted yet, so.
Maybe you want to text Savas and see if they're done
He
yet.
said he'd be at my meeting, so.
Well, he said he'd be here, too. All
But they
right.
know he's going to that one, because that meeting, they hand out the money afterwards.
All right, well, what we had asked for, it was unclear in the article, what was the actual changes, changed language, and what was the old language, the new language, and the effective impact. So this memo, which speaks specifically to impact, but I'm not sure it talks about the specific language changes. Does somebody want to walk us through it, Bonnie or Keith, either one of you have it in front of you, or?
Alan's on. the-
Oh, that's true, yeah, Alan, you're a personnel board
As
member.
the liaison.
Yeah, right. Yeah, why did we have questions about this in the first place, Alan?
I'm sorry?
Why did we have questions about this in the first place?
Well, I told you exactly this the other night. The financial impact, that's the question you had, was what's the financial impact?
Well, what we had specifically asked was what was the existing language, the changed language, and what the financial impact was.
You've got the financial impact, to tell you what the initial language is?
All right, well, all right.
No,
I'll-
off the top of
I'll
my
answer
head,
my
I
own
can't do that
question.
for you.
The first section,
But you
33.
can go to the town meeting booklet and you can read it.
I think it was after reading that, we still had
Right.
questions, was the point we were at.
Exactly.
Really, number 2 and number 5 address some financial impacts. Number 2 is just for succession planning, and, impacts could be additional training, kind of like I have in my own department with the assessor, where
Right.
we've got some transitional training in the budget request for fiscal 2015. But just kind of calling that process out. So it would help us to identify those costs proactively rather than reactively. But to put a number on them right now, you couldn't, it would depend on the department. The next one that would have an impact is item number 5. There's really, I think in looking at the practicality of it, there's probably maybe 1 or 2 employees in the town hall that might be impacted by this that use comp time as a mechanism for adjusting their hours and everything. And with the FLSA Fair Labor Standard Act changes, it really restricts heavily the use of comp time and makes it almost impossible to really utilize that. So it would fall to the department heads to make sure that their budgets, they're managing their employees so that they don't incur this obligation, that they're not using comp time, and if they could not, then, if it was an employee that might shovel snow outside, and we have a week's worth of, snow, and they've got to do their regular job and they got to shovel, you're going to have to incur some overtime, because they can't then take time off next week. It wouldn't be allowed. You have to pay them the overtime. So again, there might be some small impacts with maybe 1 or 2 departments in there.
All right.
That's the only place where you got it. Now, in terms of what language changes, the definitions, and Article 24, which is where this falls, the definitions are shown there. Workforce development is a new.
I get that.
Yeah.
All right, so on the definitions, my question there would be, are these new items that are added to a definition list? Is that what C is adding those ones? Those are the new items, correct? Exempt employee, non-exempt, promotion, workforce development, those are the only new terms. And the ones up above are changed, compensation plan, and
Right.
And what's the significant change on compensation plan? Just references to the subsections that apply to it? Is that all, that's all that's involved in that, or is it a substantive change in the?
No, it's we're every year it changes to the tune of what the number is, our 3% increase for step increase.
I understand that, but I'm saying, but that doesn't say what the change here is on 1B, by amending the following definition to read as follows.
Yeah.
What was it? It's changed from what? Any idea? I mean,
Well, you can call up with the current bylaw.
oh, okay, there you
The
go.
change is whatever the current bylaw is, plus 3%. Because
Yeah,
there's no 1%, there's no COLA.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, once upon a time, we had articles that read to change from X to Y, and now we're just seeing what Y is
Well,
without knowing what.
What we did this year is different from what we've done last year.
right.
Your
Now-
question brings it up. We did not put the compensation plan into the article this year like we have done in past years.
Okay, that's fine, that's
answers-
reasonable answer to a reasonable question.
But because we're not amending.
Yeah,
We're not amending.
we're not amending it,
the salary.
we're just adding.
Yeah.
Well, it does say amend.
Yeah, it does. It says by amending the following definition to read as follows: compensation plans specify ranges of pay for each, which suggests that the previous language was something different. And I'm guessing that it's just the number says Schedule A through D. If you've added definitions, then probably the schedule is now longer than it was, requiring the earlier change.
What section do you want me to go to?
It says section 33.7. Definitions.
30 through 7, sorry. Okay, which one?
A.
Any person.
No, it's, A is to reorder the definitions, and then B is compensation plan by, that's what it says here, and up there it says benefit eligible
What
employees.
article are we?
These don't correspond.
24.
24.
Article 24.
Amending.
Okay, I'll go back to Bonnie, I think I saw what it is there. This language says appearing as, the new language, appearing as Schedule A through D to these bylaws. And up there it said, listed on Schedule A or Schedule B of the classification and compensation plan. So that's the effective change, right? There were some later changes that this earlier language had to change to reflect that, right?
Well, if you scroll down, I think you need to scroll to the next page.
There's lots and lots of
Until you see,
definitions
until
up
you
there.
see the term compensation.
Okay, well, all right, let's not.
Second page, the pay for each job
There it is.
description.
There it is.
Letter O.
And it said appearing as Schedule A, and we've added schedules.
All right, that's
Yeah.
not listed here as this O, it's just, you can't find it by using that, find that.
Well, no, you can't, because the first item commanded that they all be reordered in alphabetical order, except that we're inserting other words.
And that's what was my earlier question was, is this simply a case where we're changing the language to reflect, and it changes to the list that require that it now say A through D as opposed to what it says right there?
Well, if you look at, in Article 24 of the warrant, Item 1, where you're amending 33-7, you go to paragraph A, you're reordering them in alphabetical order. I'm not going to show you that, it's just going to be done. Item B is amending the definition to read as follows. You see italicized the word through and the letter D. So that's added.
Yes.
So that's the existing language as modified by through D. So, in quotes, so that's,
Good.
that shows you both how it reads now and how it will read in the future.
Yep.
The next ones in item C, those are new. Each one of those are new.
I suppose if someone were to look this up, it would be help better if it said B.O, so you could actually find it in the list, but it isn't impossible to find it, but okay, that's good to know that. Now, I'll jump down to 2, the workforce development. I understand this is new language, and all the sentences have shoulds, and mostly shoulds and not too many shalls, so I'm guessing that's mostly hortatory language to encourage people to do this sort of thing, and it's not binding us to anything. Is that fair?
On workforce development?
Exactly, concerted efforts, and we should, when possible, identify, and I'm just not seeing anything that's binding there, which is fine
Well,
with me.
the only binding thing there is that you must give thought to workforce development, and where applicable, you will do such.
And that the personnel board and the town administrator shall serve as a resource for workforce development. Okay. All right. 3, I think that was one of the ones, Bonnie, you just spoke to, is that right? Is having a financial impact? No.
Nope.
Paper I don't need.
No, 2 and 5, that's right.
There's 2 and 5 have financial impact.
3, it says it's a rewording of current language. I don't have those helpful little italics here to tell me how
The
it's reworded.
existing one is up now.
Are we eliminating that stuff under 3? Is that the key thing there? It looks different. Job opening shall be posted and all that stuff?
Well, that's true even for what we used to call promotional things.
Right. But I'm not seeing that in the amendment. Does that mean it's no longer there, or?
Section 3 is on the...
Section 33-9, if that's what you're looking at,
Yeah.
would no longer read as it appears in the bylaw.
It reads as
Read as it
follows.
appears in
Okay,
the
well,
warrant.
then I guess what I need to see on the screen there is 33 dash.
That's it.
Okay. So all of that language is gonna be gone, correct? Replaced by this language?
Yes.
Fine, okay, so that list of all those little job title pay rate is replaced by essentially what is subsection 3 here.
Yep.
Fine. For,
And in essence, what was done, in 33-9, as it exists now, we have hiring and reclassification. It will in future only be hiring, and that reclassification will appear in section 33-16.
okay, I think it's just those sort of little explanations that, you know, been helpful. Because someone's apt to ask, hey, you're on the finance committee, what's the impact of this? What does this mean? I don't know. 4, the movement and reclassification of employees. Sounds similar with the changes in 3. You want to maybe call it up, Bonnie? We can,
Which one?
please, that would be 3316.
Transfer promotion of employees no longer exists. It now reads movement and reclassification of employees, and the language A through D is applicable.
And that's kind of to make it consistent with what current contract language and that sort of stuff? Is that the driving force there?
We actually wanted to clarify that the reclassification takes place is a form of movement.
Okay, so, but, you know, so pointedly, the terms transfer and promotion are gone, and we now have movement and reclassification, so presuming there's a reason for that. Is that because we live more by these reclassification studies and schedules?
It's one of the reasons is that our labor attorney has informed us about changing from promotion to reclassification, simply because there's an expectation in some quarters that you can be promoted and then step back if the promotion didn't suit you that well.
Okay,
And
makes
we
sense.
want-
And that doesn't work at all for us.
That doesn't work at all because
if
it's
we're
all out
making-
one going back.
Yeah, if we're making a whole series, usually it's a whole series of ripple effect. Someone gets promoted, therefore someone else gets hired to fill their position, someone else gets hired, and so on. And if there's some notion that the person promoted has the option unilaterally to decide to go back and upset all the other apple carts, that's not what we're intending.
Right, so promotion.
We're intending, and the way to view it, the law allows us to treat an employee going to a higher grade essentially as a new hire.
Okay. Okay, so the potential existing problem is under the language promotion, if somebody got in and all these other ripple effects took place and they decided later on they didn't like it, they could say, I'm giving back my promotion.
And we didn't want to have to, if you will, demote
Right.
all those who had been, or unseat all of those who had.
So now, if that promotion takes place, we're calling it a reclassification, and that kind of cements it as a new hire type
Makes it
thing?
clear that it doesn't have the protection, whatever protection is afforded a promotion.
Okay.
So-
All right, so I learned something there. 5, I think we already talked about that, the overtime and compensations. Anything other than the financial impact worth bringing to mind there? Doesn't look like much of a language change here.
Nope.
It's all based on changes to federal law, so that the way we handled compensation in the past, we can't do it anymore, so.
Okay. In 6, we just adopted the military leave, last year, was it?
Yeah, this brings our personnel bylaw more in line with what's in the current contracts that were approved by the Board of Selectmen.
The language that was in the bylaw previously is up there now, and it was a very generous, it was the most generous standard. And, we haven't backtracked on that. It's just, that is, we make up what the difference is between your your military pay, your town job, so.
So the impact is the same, but the language is changed just to what, to mirror contract language? Is that essentially it, or?
That was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay.
You're correct. The financial impact is unchanged because it was already the most generous financial benefit.
All right. And then the final piece, 7, those are, those are new grades for those positions according to the study, is that right, Alan, Keith, either one of
It
you?
is where we have revised job descriptions or updated job descriptions and then applied them to the existing salary schedule. Based on how those job descriptions were rated, they were then applied to the salary schedule that exists. Salary schedule is not amended, we just plugged these titles into the existing schedule, along with similarly classified positions.
All right. Well, I appreciate all the background on that, and I don't know if you guys voted that article at the meeting. I was not in attendance at it or not, or whether you're looking for a vote on that.
We're looking for a vote on it.
You're looking for a vote on that. Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion unless there's further discussion.
Move that we recommend approval of Article 24, Board of Selectmen Personnel Board bylaw amendments.
Second?
Okay, motion's made and seconded then that the Finance Committee recommend Article 24, recommended personnel bylaw changes or amendments. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Is there anything else in terms of Finance Director's report, Bonnie?
We are in the process of preparing the town meeting binders for you all.
Okay.
We should have them done by Friday, so I can have them available in my office, or we can drop them off at the police station, or if somebody wants to stop by and pick up a couple.
A reminder email is all I need.
I will do that as soon as they're ready, but it'll have the explanations and backup materials for each article. Again, it's not so that you have to give any presentation on it, it's just so that you'll have the info if asked. So.
All right, did we have new minutes from the last meeting? I've forgotten. All right. What's the date on those? All right. I don't have them in front of me, so I'll take it on faith if someone else has them. I have read them in detail.
Send those out right afterwards, right? Last time you did it really fast, and you got some
Yeah.
comments back, or not this time, remember?
Comments back.
There were not?
No, not one comment came back.
The 8th, I was at that meeting, correct? That was the prior one I was not.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
we're at that one.
Everybody was here, except for Peter Vilka.
Right. Right. Okay. So member want to make a,
Motion to accept the meeting of April 8th?
Second?
okay, motion's been made and seconded to accept the minutes for the April 8th meeting as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. Well, whenever Light Water gets here, they get here. Otherwise, you want to resume?
back to the
taking-
slides?
Yeah, go back to the slides. Well, you out there in TV land, please ignore this pre-production performance.
Okay.
Where were we? Okay, that was looking good.
All right, so I'll just go through the beginning again.
I only had a couple boo-boos is what I saw, so I don't know.
Chris, I fixed the
captured-
spelling of your names.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry about that. This one was fine.
Fred, you're going to take that one, are you? Okay.
Okay, so I changed the verbiage and just added the sentence at the end about continuing to update the policies as needed. Okay. Article 4.
Yeah. that's me,
So those are-
You're doing the operating budget, Alan, is that correct?
No.
All right,
I'm
who's
doing
got
debt
Article 4?
service.
Yeah. You are? Okay. Were you planning on, I noticed it's not written here anywhere, any of the highlights from the budget, such as the increased council on aging hours or the fact that it's a full-staffed budget. Are you going to be speaking to that at all? Or would you want to
Sure,
just
I
cover
mean,
it in conclusion?
I wasn't planning on speaking to it,
Well,
but I may.
I just,
That's why I wanted to know what everyone was gonna get into before,
Me-
you
me-
know,
me
so I
too,
could
me
decide
too,
how,
I know.
because I mean, Article 4, I could do everyone's, pretty much, you know.
right, all right, well, I'll, whatever you don't speak to, I will catch at the end. How's
I
that?
was just gonna highlight the numbers, and I was gonna look at like the offsets, you know, what makes up kind of the offsets, that
Okay.
sort of stuff. And basically just some changes, just, you know, what's going on, and that's pretty much it, so.
Okay.
Vaughn,
All right.
you were gonna say something, or?
Do you want me to insert a slide that has those bullet
Not, maybe not
points, or-
now, maybe for town meeting. Tonight, there's an audience that's been waiting for an hour and a half.
Patiently.
Bated breath, yes, sir.
Okay.
You mean what the?
Probably went over the Antiques Roadshow for a while. and we'll be back. Oh, that's right, yeah. 5, this is slide 5. Who's presenting that? Is that part of yours too, school appropriation?
Yeah.
Again, if I were a listening audience, I'd want to know why the percentages are jumping, you know?
Yeah.
There's got to be a story to that.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'm on that, so, yeah, so, that shouldn't be, gonna talk about the circuit breaker, obviously, on this year. You know, talk about the double steps in 14, right, Bonnie?
Okay.
No step in 13, and then the 640.
Don't say double step. I beg you, let's use the precise language.
Which is?
Which is.
Deferred.
Deferred steps, okay, fine,
Okay.
deferred
I'm just-
steps,
I'm
all right.
just-
Payment of the
You're
deferred
right.
steps.
That's fair.
Okay, so
Very good.
deferred
All the
steps.
trouble Kerry got into using apartheid about Israel, you know? Can't do anything.
Okay, right. Yeah, so, so I'm fine on those. And the
Okay.
same with the technical school assessment, I'm just gonna talk about, you know, the jump in the students, you know, the 2 kids at Minuteman with like, for
Don't
the
give it all
engineering.
away now, you know, the audience is, we gotta save something for the audience. The other point on the school appropriation is that the reserves part, that the state.
Yeah, circuit breaker, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's driven by the state requirements, I got that part.
Okay, cool.
Right, yes, circuit breaker, yes.
This looks like making sausage, guys.
Yeah, well, that's how government is. Fringe, is that part of yours too?
Yep, so, and Fringe,
The choice of being
just
the incoming
gonna-
chairman, you get to do everything.
the thing on Fringe was, just gonna talk about OPEB, and that's why I wanted Bonnie's management letter, to talk about the new
I
GASB
sent that too.
stuff, just because that kind of relates to the OPEB, the unfunded liability, 18 million, a little over 18 million, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And then I'm assuming, what was it, when did we go with GIC, was that in 13?
We're not GIC. We're through Maya, but
We
we,
went with a GIC similar,
in 13. That's why the increase in 13 was less than.
yes, exactly, so that was my point on that.
Okay.
So that's why 13 was so slow. So that's me,
All right.
on the capital.
Cool, thank you. Capital's you, Alan, is that right?
Yep.
All right, and Bonnie, that's pretty straightforward, right? You know, the one question I had on that doesn't show up is some of these other slides, we have comparisons with previous years. We've got this year's capital spending plan, equipment and facilities. Do we have a prior year?
I can
number?
get you the prior year numbers and insert them in here.
Right, I think that's always good to look at the trends on that sort of stuff, but,
And if not for tonight, that's one thing I might be looking
I'll
to
just-
change for Monday night. Or, are you okay with that? But it is your slide.
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay, good,
I know we didn't do it last year, that's why I didn't make a
Right.
change.
right. Debt service is you too, Alan, is that right?
Yes. I'll make several comments as to the short-term debt.
Do we have does the next slide say, or do we show that okay. It'd be great to show that the trend, you know, is downward. I mean, that's one of our victories, isn't it?
That the debt service trend
You
is
go home and
downward.
watch it on TV, Keith?
No, I
Well-
have more work to do, I'm gonna go up and I'm meeting out of the office tomorrow morning.
Oh.
Gonna have to get it done before.
All right.
Actually,
Thank you.
total
Thank
debt
you.
service is up for this
Short-term
year.
debt, yeah, short-term debt is up.
That's why,
Okay. And you know the story behind the story on that, huh? We're waiting to hear.
It's only money.
Building money, all right. I guess we're okay with that slide then?
We were fine until Paul took over, and then debt has gone through the
Right,
roof.
yep. We can track that through history, it's always true, follow me around.
This one's mine, I try to keep it as dirt simple as
Yep.
possible.
Looks wonderful, and I'm sure
Oxygen
you'll...
and Jello are good.
Yeah, no, it looks good and reads well. Is the future outlook, is that part of yours too? No? Is that, are we
No,
on the
that's
meeting?
me.
Oh, that's you, okay, all right. Are you fine with everything you had? You can speak to it, yeah.
Yeah.
And Betsy?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same as last year, except I also mentioned, we've also got other things coming online, like the fire station, the OPEB reporting, the visibility of the reporting is getting more stringent, that's going to continue. And my plug about the AAA bond rating, which is, the goal isn't to get the AAA rating. The AAA rating is recognition that we're doing the right things for the long-term financial stability of the town. So just to tie that in with following our practices and so on here.
Well, I'm probably going to have just spoken about that.
Okay, all
Well,
right.
the one thing with this slide, can you break it up into two slides or take out about 50% of the words? Because it's just not, that's just not readable. It's too many words for us. for
The
this
same
slide.
slide we used last year, it's the exact same slide.
I know, and I had that comment last year.
Okay, I don't care.
Well,
It's too many,
It's pretty, up to you.
for tonight, I'd
Yeah,
like to,
just forget it.
if we can make some change on it between now and next Monday when we'll show it again. Well, actually, we'll be doing a reduced version of this then, but
okay.
show must go on. And I'd make a similar comment about my own slides, the conclusion. I will try to whittle that down for next Monday, but I can use this as a basis to speak from. Once again, a lot of these things remain true.
Yep.
All right. Are we all, if I begin, are we all set to go, everybody? And I'll just lead off by reading what the roster is, and everybody can hand it on to the next person on their list. So
Do it here. Last time we actually stood up here or something like that. I guess we don't need to do
we
that now.
don't need to do that
huh?
now
We do
because
that now.
Bonnie's going to be handling the,
Okay.
What'll be up?
yep.
But probably, I mean, we will all be standing here today. Or will
Well,
we-
I just do a short
yeah, just
version.
An overview.
Chairman version.
Yeah, we don't have to get up.
At least that's what we did last year.
Yeah, that's good with me. I
Okay.
think that's the right thing.
Okay, well then, thank you, folks, and hopefully you enjoyed the substantive meeting that we've already had tonight on the Littleton Finance Committee as we bring the various pieces of our FY15 annual budget and other warrant articles into shape for next Monday night's town meeting. What we are going to be going over with you for the next several minutes is the annual report presentation for the Littleton Annual Town Meeting to be held on May 5th, 2014. We'll be doing this in succession, the various members of the committee. Following my introduction, the budget process will be spoken to by the dean of our membership, Fred Faulkner. We will then be hearing specific review of the FY 2015 budget and warrant articles from Vice Chair Chris Hinckley. And we will have some description of the town's capital budgeting and debt service, current and prospective, from member Alan McCray. Then the clerk of the board, Brian Tarbox, will be speaking to financial policies in the town's bond rating upgrade. As we did last year with OPEB, we've picked a topic for particular attention, and this year we think it's very appropriate for that to be a topic we'd like to bring under closer scrutiny by the town. Future outlook for the town's finances and spending, member Betsy Bowling will be speaking to that, and then at the end I will wrap up with a general conclusion of the Finance Committee's report that we have made in writing and which has been mailed to the town people in advance of the town meeting. So with that, and without any further delay, I will turn our oral and video presentation over to Fred Faulkner.
Thank you, Paul. Excuse me, as we began last year, we changed our budget process, and we basically followed along a very similar path this particular year. We had an earlier start with the budget directive set out around 10:15 We gathered all the departments in a Saturday marathon session where all of the department heads basically present their requests, and they could all hear one another's requests at one time. And we felt that that's an activity where people can actually gain a better appreciation for the different departments' wants and needs. So we probably will be continuing that going on into the future. We really tried to place an emphasis on priorities within the departments, meeting with all of the elected boards and the departments who report to them. When people make requests, we try to balance them against the departmental priorities and the cross-departmental priorities. We also are trying to maintain a focus on managing the budget process within the town's financial policies, and I'm sure you'll hear more about the benefit that we have gained from that attention. The next slide, future capital, project planning. We're anticipating several large capital projects that are being proposed. You've probably heard about the fire station and potential library down the road. We created a capital stabilization fund, which we did fund with some one-time revenues last year. And our financial policy actually states that we should fund this stabilization fund on an annual basis, and we will be doing so at the annual town meeting. The Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen have adopted policies to govern the use of that fund, and we'll continue to update these policies as needed as we get into projects that we'll want to draw from those funds. With that, I'll pass it on to Chris.
Okay, getting into Article 4, which is the town operating budget. First thing I'd like to just kind of point out is I'm just looking at a 3-year comparison here. Some of the things I'd like to talk about just identifies the offsets. Each year you can see the offsets, roughly about $1 million, and just kind of wanted to point out a few of those offsets, being the Park and Rec, about $120,000-130,000 a year. We get ambulance fees, that comes out to be about $280,000-290,000 a year for those receipts. We also get cable fees, $130,000 from them, and then a couple other areas we get money from is cell towers, trust funds, and the cemetery. So that's basically what's in that offset number. As far as the increases, in 14, mainly a lot of that increase was the deferred steps for the teachers. And then in 15, it's mainly there's about $300,000 going to the school department. So if we jump into my next slide, the school appropriation. Again, a 3-year history on that. Looking back at FY13, mainly the increase, the $640,000 was the snow and ice, unused snow and ice money from FY12 that went towards the schools. And you can also see the trend on the schools as far as the reserves. The $500,000 each year is composed of circuit breaker money, even though they do use their school choice. And then again, as I was saying with the Article 4 and the operating budget in FY14, there's 2 deferred steps there that were negotiated in FY13, so there was no steps in 13 and 2 in 14. And then this year's budget, big discussion was with the school's circuit breaker and the state requirements as far as circuit breaker funds work, which is you bill in 1 year, you receive the reimbursements in the following year, and you have to spend them by the following year after that. So within a 3-year period, you need to spend those funds. So the school committee and the school department worked well with the finance committee and the town finance folks to come to an agreement to increase the circuit breaker funds, which were, like as I said, were driven by the state requirements to use that carried over circuit breaker funds. Now if I move on to my next slide, The technical school assessments, not a whole lot going on there. The enrollment is pretty stable, and I guess some things to point out is there are 2 students that attend Minuteman because apparently there's a program, engineering program that's not offered in Neshoba Tech. So those 2 students go to Minuteman. And then also to kind of point out, there's going to be a large capital project hoping to take place for an accelerated roof repair, roughly about $2.8 million that they're looking to do this summer. And Littleton's portion of that over a 10-year debt schedule is going to be about $80,000. So that's what's going on there in FY15. If we move on to my next slide, the fringe benefits. Again, 3-year look at the history. Looking at FY13, that was a lower than normal year at 3.89% because that was when the town went with a GIC similar plan, so they had some savings there. And then just moving forward, the town's been, aggressively contributing to OPEB, and there are some new GASB laws, some new government standard board laws as far as funding that and how it's calculated on the town financials. So they've been aggressive with keeping up with the OPEB. So that's going well. And then I will move on and pass it on to Brian with the capital budget. Alan with the capital budget.
Thanks, Chris. My portion of the presentation covers capital spending and debt service obligations for FY 2015. Before we get to the first slide, I'd just like to know that this past year, the town conducted a comprehensive facilities assessment of our municipal buildings and facilities. We did this with a view towards committing a part of our capital spending each year to maintaining these existing buildings and their major subsystems. We had great results from our consultant, and now we have a blueprint to go forward with to ensure that we can repair and replace buildings or major systems before they fail and cause damage to adjacent facilities. As you know, this has happened in the past. Again, as in all municipal undertakings, prioritizing is the key, as there's never enough money to do everything that we have on the list. My first slide shows the capital budgeting for this year, and we broke it down, as I was just explaining, to spending on capital for equipment and facilities and infrastructure. The total capital budget is $1,409,562. On the equipment side of that is $880,000 plus. Now this went, as usual, to fire department, police department, highway, and mostly schools, as we've done in the past. Additionally, this year we're putting capital budgeting money into facilities and infrastructure. This year that's $529,409. And that's taking care of all the schools, some items in the town office building, to include the COA kitchen, some things for the library, and a couple of others. It's important to note that the money for this comes from existing available funds, and that once again we've not relied on any capital expenditures and no resulting additional taxes. The next slide shows the debt service for 2015. Debt service portion for our budget this year is $4,421,172. The current bonding debt total is $25,694,562. Debt service for short-term debt is $755,000. Of this, $485,000 will be paid off this coming year. These monies have been authorized by town meeting as debt exclusions for the track and specific items at Russell Street School. However, they were paid inside the levy and never went onto your tax bill. I'll be followed by Brian Tarbox.
Thank you, Alan. Policy and bond rating. The bond rating is in a sense the grade that the rating agencies give us to see how we're doing, at least on the borrowing side, but actually as a reflection of overall handling of our money. And for the second year, we've been increased. We actually got increased two full steps this year to AAA, and that's the highest rating that's possible. So we have the best bond rating in the state at this point, which means we should have the lowest possible borrowing cost, which saves us a lot of money that we can then turn around and use in various ways. Now, we got this high rating because of our use of policies. And it was actually quite interesting last year when we got the first increase in bond rating, which saved us some money because of policies. Then there was a bit of a feeding frenzy to see, how could we spend this extra money? And FinCom turned around and said, we have a policy for that. And the policy is to turn around and prepay extra debt. So it's sort of it's one of those good cycles where good behavior leads to good results, leads to more good behavior. So go policies, they save the town money. There's an interboard working group on policies that's looking at all our policies and trying to add new ones where appropriate. One of the interesting ones that Fred referred to earlier was the Capital Stabilization Fund, in that we don't yet have the rules established by policy for when we can withdraw, but we have sort of an agreement that says, until we establish what the rules are for withdrawing from the fund, we won't withdraw from the fund. And all of this gives great comfort to the bond rating agencies because they want to see predictability. They don't like surprises. So all of our efforts are trying to get predictability. And in addition to the interboard group, working group, FinCom continues to work on policies on its own. That's it. And now back to Betsy.
Okay, I'm going to talk about future outlook. Our town is stable. Our financial outlook right now is consistent with last year, and that's good. As Brian said, we don't like surprises. We like things to be consistent, and we work very hard on that. Problems we did not encounter this year, like health insurance, utility cost spikes, unexpected sped costs, and other emergencies could still happen next year in the future, so you always have to plan for that, and we hope for the best, but right now that's where we are. Our projections still show a structural deficit, however, a few years out. We have employee-related costs and expenses are outpacing the revenues, and so this is something we have to continue to be diligent about and work on. We need for our elected officials to act to address both of these, and again, as you hear in a consistent message here, the boards are working together, we have policies, we're putting this all in place so it does work, but this is the effort. And we need to follow these policies as we have them. We know there's new things coming down. We have a capital plan now, as you've heard. So we have visibility now to the need of the capital items that need to be done to save us so much other money down the way in terms of replacements and so on. We know there's a new fire station that's needed. We know OPEB is going to continue to be chomping at our heels in terms of requirements for that. And so the future outlook is stable, it's good, but we have to continue to be diligent. I'll hand it over to Paul for a wrap-up.
Okay. Well, a lot of the topics that are specifically spoken to in the conclusion bullet items have been covered at some point in the earlier presentations, but I would like to wrap up, and I think I speak on behalf of the board in saying that our budget process this year, not unusual for Littleton, is again a happy one of consensus between the boards that work for the town, primarily the selectmen, the school committee, finance committee, and all of it is made to look and receives proper recognition for its professionalism because of our great finance team headed by Assistant Town Administrator, Finance Director Bonnie Holston, and we thank her for all her work. Budget highlights behind the numbers that are worth noting. First, in terms of oversight funding that the town approved last year with the support of the boards and the Finance Committee, included increased staffing at the fire department, and that has already been demonstrably a success in terms of call report times from the department to incidents that have been roughly half what they had been previously. So your investment in the fire department staffing has been returned already in better public safety. This year's budget is a full staffing budget with significant capital expenditures as well, as was spoken to earlier. The only department to receive specific additional hours was Council on Aging staffing to serve growing needs of the elderly population and other human service needs. Among the capital projects funded for the first time this year is revisiting of the master plan process, and money was put aside to begin that process. An item worth mentioning is this the second year in a row we've had a bit of a annoyance in that we're proposing a budget that has a structural deficit of $98,000 built into it. We are very confident that that sum will be made up when the state cherry sheet funding or the state funding becomes official after the beginning of July 1st. And as with last year, we'll make adjustments at the fall town meeting to bring that into line. It doesn't project any risk in terms of spending or in terms of cuts that would have to be made, and we're working on avoiding that problem next year. Beyond that, as has been stated, there's a banner year for the town, specifically with the Standard & Poor ratings, which is both a reward and a challenge to continue good practices, specifically around the area of financial policies. Over the past year, we have indeed, as Brian mentioned earlier, convened our working group on financial policies, which reviewed, amended, and had affirmative votes from both the selectmen and the finance committee on those policies. And that's an ongoing process that we conduct mostly in the off-budget season. So we'll be getting into that business again in the next month or two. And so with that, we encourage folks to go to the town website if you want information in more detail. I think it's littletonma.org, if I've got that correct, and you should be able to find everything there. And please come to town meeting on Monday, May 5th at 7 p.m., the Charles Forbes K Gymnasium, Littleton Middle School. Thank you.
Don't thank me, thank you.
Move to adjourn, or?
I guess so. We don't have the light and water come. Oh, we could refer to their.
It's too late anyway. I turn into a pumpkin pretty soon. They don't want
Right.
to, they don't want me voting on anything after
No,
that.
but we did get something in writing from them. Do you have a summary of it? Do you have any comment on what they sent along, Bonnie? or-
I just briefly looked at it, and I really don't at this point. I mean, I know, the first
it-
one involves the grant funding,
They're both revenue neutral.
yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a tradition that we, night of town meeting,
right.
we'll handle their articles.
You ever heard anybody comes and stands in front of us?
Yep, yep. This is the last year for the Ever Ready Money. I don't know what we've got in store in years to come. All right, so was that a motion, Betsy?
It was a motion. Motion to
Actually,
adjourn. Oh,
just
nope,
one-
not quite yet.
Just want to say, one last thing, I just want to say, it's been a pleasure working with you guys, folks, the last 2 years, and,
It has been a
Good
pleasure.
luck to you.
Yeah, thank you. You will be sitting with us at town meeting.
Yes,
absolutely.
Okay, and in whatever fashion, here or in other capacities, I hope we're working with you more in the future.
Absolutely.
I have thoroughly enjoyed your second term on our board,
Right.
and I expect that you'll be watching the website that says there's a vacancy on the Finance Committee, and we'll put your application in.
Indeed, I mean, it does, well, maybe we can talk more after.
Well, I did have a motion on the floor. Is there a second to adjourn?
Nobody wants to leave.
Okay.
Second.
I'll second.
Second.
There you go.
Motion's made and seconded to adjourn. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No, the ayes have it. Good night, folks.
Thank you.
Good night, folks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bonnie.